We clearly got off on the wrong foot.
Then try this one.
Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host with another marvelous video. This time, Superman Red and Blue Origins Explored. Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Superman were to increase his mental prowess by 100 times? Or if Superman had energy manipulation powers? Today, we're going to explore the comics ranging from the Silver Age of DC Comics and the 90s, all the way to the modern day Superman. We'll dive deep into the stories that follow these superpowered beings and discuss their powers and abilities too. Even though the reception of the stories related to Superman Red and Superman Blue has never been the best, we, among many others, believe that these stories have an excellent background. At the same time, the artwork and storytelling complement the Man of Steel even further. So sit back and relax as we start with the 90s version of Superman Red and Blue. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. What happened when two distinctly different variants of the Man of Steel were created? We follow the story of Superman Blue. This version of Superman is not how he used to be. The classic Superman used to harness solar energy to become even more powerful and had a well-known set of skills. Superman Blue, on the other hand, develops energy-based powers and abilities. Due to this sudden shift, Clark is forced to adopt a new suit that allows him to control his powers better. This new suit is majorly blue in color with blue shaded whites to give him a distinguishable appearance. The suit is basically a containment zone and helps in the prevention of unwanted energy dispersal. On top of Superman's plethora of powers, such as flight, super strength, and many others, Superman Blue has a bunch of new abilities, such as shooting bolts of electricity instead of the regular heat vision and following trails of radioactive energies. He's also able to completely turn off his Superman powers and become a normal human, vulnerable to everyday human dangers. The story begins as we see Superman Blue rushing to Stryker's Island after receiving a distress call from the Warden concerning the Toyman, Winslow Schott. Superman Blue is worried that Schott has found another treacherous way to make his escape from the so-called highest security prison on Earth. From here on, we'll refer to Superman Blue as just Blue, to avoid any confusion. After reaching there, he's briefed by the Warden that Schott hasn't moved in the last 20 hours, which is extremely suspicious. Warning the guards to back down, Blue moves in closer to investigate. Upon interacting with the body, it's revealed that it's a decoy to lure him in. Swiftly, Blue is engulfed in a gooey green mess which is solidifying around his body. As a recording of Schott plays in the background, he exclaims how the thermoplastic resin consuming him is designed primarily to neutralize the effects of Blue's suit and disperse his energy. Ultimately, Blue is able to escape this trap by using his uncovered souls to phase through the floor below him. But Blue knows that all these shenanigans orchestrated by Toyman are just warning shots, and Toyman knew he'd get out of the trap. Blue figures that the next step in stopping the maniacal Schott will be to ensure that he doesn't tamper with the plethora of toys being distributed during the celebration of Christmas. We then see Toyman collecting toys from around the city. After a round of collecting, Toyman inspects one of the toys, and his mother tells him that the toy is actually Cyborg, an old nemesis of Superman who matches him in powers. Together, the unlikely duo of Toyman and Cyborg creates their master scheme to dispose of Superman once and for all. Meanwhile, Clark is taking a break from his duties of being Superman and saving the planet by being on a date with the love of his life, Lois Lane. The two decide to go ice skating together, and Lois finds it comical how the person previously known as the Man of Steel is now an everyday human finding mundane tasks like ice skating difficult to understand. Clark talks about how the feeling of becoming a human once again is great, as he can experience the nuisance of small things, such as the bite of a mosquito, and feel hungry or tired. But their date is interrupted by an enormous explosion nearby, and when the startled Clark and Lois look up, they realize it's none other than Cyborg causing the menace. Lois tries persuading Clark to call for backup from the Justice League, but he dashes off as soon as he can, stating that by the time the others come, Cyborg will have destroyed the city entirely. Clark quickly finds cover and turns into Superman Blue, followed by a blinding burst of energy. As Blue rushes in to tackle Cyborg, he points his aggression towards an empty building that was set to demolish soon to minimize collateral damage concerning the lives of the innocent. During this time, Lois tries to find a suitable vantage point to cover the action promptly and chooses the rooftop of a high building. Upon reaching there, she sees a man dressed in a Santa costume. She's startled when she realizes that it's none other than Toyman himself. Schott then captures Lois in a string-like substance that constricts her tightly and restricts any kind of movement from her side, even covering her face. As the battle between Blue and Cyborg rages on, Cyborg talks about how they're more similar now than they had ever been before, as Superman is also a being of living energy much like him. Blue disagrees, face and states that the two will never be comparable. Then Cyborg attempts to hit Blue with his heat vision, which is now calibrated to demolish Superman's energy form after Cyborg's ion disruptor successfully damages Blue's energy sphere, allowing him to read his biofrequencies. Still not able to gain the upper hand, Cyborg chooses to use his blasters to destroy a nearby building that was occupied by thousands of people. Blue immediately drops his guard and goes to save the people from a catastrophe. He does so by using his energy as a holding field, allowing the residents more time to evacuate before the building collapses. Meanwhile, Cyborg continues attacking Blue from behind, but Blue uses his attacks to turn the rubble into a solid mass using the heat to provide further support to the building. Impressed, Cyborg discloses his true plan to Blue and reveals his secret partner in crime. He introduces him as the Inventor, and Blue understands that it's Toyman as a giant suit resembling a weird toy comes out. The suit then uses a gun on Blue, which sucks Superman in and traps him. Toyman is able to do so by using a tractor beam, which is able to manipulate Superman's movements in his energy form. Before Blue is completely captured, he sees Lois being wrapped in strings by Toyman on the roof. Next, we see Blue waking up in an entrapment created by Toyman, which allows him to contain his energy. Not only contain, but this entrapment also siphons the energy released by Blue, so whenever he tries to escape it, the machine gets stronger with its grasp on him. Cyborg revels in Blue's pain as he sees him struggling, while Toyman holds Lois at gunpoint in front of him. Cyborg explains how the machine is breaking down Blue's energy structures to disintegrate all traces of his siphoned powers into thousands of different fragments. Their plan seems to work perfectly, and Blue struggles till his final breath while the machine sucks his life energy away. Eventually, Blue disappears from within the entrapment after a surge of blinding light surrounds him. Cyborg is astonished to see that their plan has worked and that he has defeated his arch-nemesis. As Cyborg flies away, he states how he always thought that this moment would bring him much more happiness than it has. But as soon as he goes away, the machine starts showing signs of life once again. This time, there are two powerful energies swirling around inside the trap, and soon there is a big explosion of red and blue energy. Returning back from his seeming death, Blue is enraged and dashes straight in front of Toyman to save Lois from the maniac. Blue talks to Lois about how he feels on top of the world and how he just needed to get his act together. But unbeknownst to him, the machine has created a replica of him, imbued with red energy. After bursting out from the trap, Superman Red, we'll just call him Red, goes straight for Cyborg, who's enjoying the fact that he lives in a Superman-free world now. But he's stunned when Superman appears right in front of him, now in a red suit and angrier than before. Red ambushes Cyborg and pushes him out of the exosphere of Earth's atmosphere. They travel close to the speed of light, and Red threatens to take Cyborg directly into the sun. Cyborg then has only one option, which is to merge his consciousness into the antenna that Red is holding to push him back. Cyborg does exactly that to survive, and Red flies back triumphantly. Meanwhile, Blue takes Toyman back to Stryker's Island to keep him in another prison cell, all while wondering why he can't see any trace of Cyborg around. At the same time, Red makes his way back and is surprised to see that Lois has been saved and Toyman is nowhere to be seen. Both Supermen then fly down to the Daily Planet, the building where Lois works, in hopes of seeing her again and telling her about the missing details so she can finish up her story. Superman Red and Superman Blue also appeared back in the Silver Age. Back in the Silver Age of DC Comics, the story of Superman Red and Superman Blue first surfaced in issue number 162 of the Superman continuity in the year 1939. The story we just covered was made in 1998 and acted as a reference and throwback to this original story from back in the day. The overall story is much more convoluted in comparison to its 90s counterpart and has Superman running a bunch of errands while attempting to save the day. This classic tale of Superman begins with Superman being perplexed by the plethora of things he has to do. With all of these unaccomplished goals in mind, Superman thinks to himself how all of his previous efforts have basically been useless. He believes he's unworthy of being Superman as he's not even able to finish the goals that he himself has created and vowed to finish. Superman is reprimanded by the Kandorians from the bottle city of Kandor, to whom he promised he'd find a way to enlarge their city and bring them back to their former glory. He's also shunned for the incomplete vow he'd taken to protect the Earth from wrongdoers by vanquishing evil and minimizing crime on Earth. Finally, he fails in his promise to find an antidote for green kryptonite, which is poisonous to all super beings from Krypton. The Kandorians then give Superman a 6-month trial period to complete all these tasks. Otherwise, one of them will take Superman's place and complete them for him. Burdened with an unbelievable number of tasks, Superman resorts to his final idea, believing that it's impossible for him to accomplish each goal without it. He invents the Brain Evolution Machine that he thinks will increase his brain capacity and mental power by a multiple multiplier of 100, allowing him to complete his tasks with relative ease. The device is powered by all the different types of kryptonite known to him, and although Supergirl fears for Superman's safety, he assures her that nothing will go wrong. As the two fire up the brain-enhancing machine, Superman straps himself in, and Supergirl starts the machine up. Something goes horribly wrong, and Superman screams in agony, saying that the machine is splitting his head, and begs Supergirl to turn it off. Right when Supergirl turns the device off, the containment glass bursts and out come two different Supermans. One of the Supermen is donned in an all-red suit while the other is in all-blue. The machine had an unexpected side effect on Superman, and it allowed him to split into two equal beings. The twins then give themselves the title of Superman Red and Superman Blue, appropriate to their costumes. The Supermen then remark on the use of the machine, and they're able to conclude that their brain capacity has been increased by 100 times, and the explosion has caused their atomic structure to double, making two different Supermen. Working together with their enhanced intellect and basically doubling the hands on board, the Supermen get straight to fixing their first issue. They work on Brainiac's enlarging ray so that they can finish one of the goals as soon as possible. The Supermen create a planetoid from fragments of hypermagneton by hurling them together. After making the surface, they wait for the strange magnetic reactions of the material to attract all existing kryptonite from the known universe. The kryptonite, which is drawn from different parts of space, is then deactivated as its atomic structure changes, making it safe for them to go near to. They name the planet New Krypton and enlarge the bottle city of Kandor on its surface, successfully completing their first task. Even though most Kandorians believe all of this to be impossible, they are more stunned by the fact that two Supermen are working together and performing these tasks so easily and effectively. Freed from their prison, the inhabitants of Kandor are ecstatic on seeing the Supermen's feat and thank them from the bottom of their hearts. The Supermen also aid the people in performing small tasks to get them right back on track, as all super beings work at an extra fast pace while being energized by the power of the sun. Then Superman is approached by the mermaid named Laurie Lamaris. She urged the two Supermen to help out the people of Atlantis by creating a home for them. To do this, Superman has to create an underwater world for the citizens and also arrange for their journey from space to this new home. They do this by creating a huge current of water rising like a column from the surface of a planet with an abundance of water, successfully allowing the Atlanteans to migrate. The citizens are thankful for the Supermen and name their new planet Hydra. The Supermen then take on their next task, which is to eradicate all signs of crime and evil from the face of the Earth. They start creating a machine which will basically be an anti-evil ray to help them to shift the mindset of people who would go on to commit crimes. The ray is basically made to lower the evil tendencies of its target's brains. They first try the experiment on a couple of ants, and after the whole test is successful, the Supermen start creating a series of satellites that will orbit the Earth and project the anti-evil ray onto the people of the world. Following this, strange occurrences start taking place all over the world, such as countries disposing of their weapons of mass destruction, dictators freeing their prisoners, burglars returning the goods they stole, and much more. The most peculiar of all the cases happens when a fleet of alien spaceships is about to attack Earth, commanded by Brainiac, and the anti-evil ray makes them change their mind, and instead they blow up their destroyer robots and retreat back to their planet. Even Lex Luthor, the evil mastermind, focused all his attention on creating a super serum that will cure all known diseases to help humanity through his massive knowledge. The serum Luthor creates works perfectly, and the whole world rejoices as their diseases and ailments are cured. Meanwhile, Supergirl releases a bunch of reformed criminals from the Phantom Zone, stating that they're no longer evildoers due to the effect of the anti-evil ray. Soon after, the inmates immigrate to New Krypton, and they're transported through the use of a spaceship provided by the Legion of Superheroes. With the world finally at peace, the Supermen can take a much-deserved break from working at super speed to solve everything. They then focus on their personal matters and choose to sort out their own lives. They first focus on their love lives and try to sort out their love triangle with Lana Lang and Lois Lane. They're able to quickly resolve this as Superman Blue asks Lana to marry him, while Superman Red proposes to Lois. They soon orchestrate their wedding, and with them, a third couple also gets married, Jimmy Olsen and Lucy Lane. Over time, Superman Red starts feeling homesick, so with the help of Superman Blue, Lois accompanies her husband to New Krypton. Meanwhile, Superman Blue hangs up his duties as Superman and employs his super robots to take care of Earth's natural calamities. He lives happily with his wife and devotes himself to scientific research and his family. The modern reboot of Superman Red and Blue explored. The modern reboot of Superman Red and Blue takes on a radically different approach than its predecessors or counterparts. Unlike the comics of the Silver Age in the 90s, this Superman Red and Blue story doesn't consider the existence of two different Supermen. Instead, they focus on Superman as a vulnerable being, a pseudo-human who constantly battles his emotions and tries to do the best he can, while believing what he does is right. He tries to withhold his morals and principles in everything he does so that he can be a better man. There are 6 issues in this beautifully made modern-day comic. Let's explore them one by one. Superman, the human alien from Earth. We see the Man of Steel showing signs of vulnerability and self-doubt while en route to a scheduled interview with one of Lubania's wealthiest entrepreneurs, Nikolai Kozlov. Clark thinks about how, as Superman, he hasn't felt this nervous and have his body tremble ever since the time he had to move a planet by force. But interviewing this man comes with a lot of suppressed memories that Clark is still trying to overcome. While he was a prisoner of war in Lubania, Superman had been depowered by the authorities using kryptonite and tortured endlessly. Although he doesn't outrightly say it, Clark monologues in a way that implies he was sexually harassed on multiple occasions in Kozlov's presence. At the interview, Clark ensures that he doesn't let his intrusive thoughts win, because if he does, he'll disintegrate this former monster into nothing but ashes. Toward the end of the interview, Clark comes to the conclusion that Kozlov has neither reformed nor is he remorseful for all the lives he'd taken and ruined. But Clark doesn't let this get to him and eventually turns back into Superman, stating how he cares about what is right and what is wrong, signifying that he'll do everything in his power to do good. Superman arrives at a funeral held by Melvin Northridge for his mother. Melvin states how he's disappointed that Superman wasn't there for her. Melvin talks about the plethora of letters he wrote to Superman asking for aid, but he's taken aback when Superman knows the exact number of letters he had written. Superman explains how he gets thousands of fan mail every day, and he tries to go through them all. He eventually came across Melvin's letters, but by that point it was too late. Melvin was scarred as a child when he saw his mother injecting heroin into her veins after being frustrated with her life, with the father of Melvin passing away and her boss ruining her work life. Before that moment, Melvin had a run-in with Superman while the latter saved the city from a supervillain attack. Superman was Melvin's hero, and he thought that telling his mother this story would cheer her up. But seeing her state, Melvin was traumatized, and later that night, she tried to talk to her son. She explained why she was doing what she was doing, and she stated that using heroin was the worst decision of her life. But she still made Melvin promise her that he would never indulge in drugs, and Melvin agreed while his mother apologized to him. Melvin was told by his mother to always look out for the symbol of Superman, as it was the symbol of hope. Melvin states how he'll never forget that, but understands that the superheroes of their generation are not gods and emperors, even though they inspire a lot of lives on the streets. He just believes in hope and awaits a better tomorrow. Superman then asks Melvin if there's anything he can do to help, to which Melvin responds by asking Superman to bury his mother in the starlight, as it was what she wanted. Before Superman goes away, Melvin tells him that he's in a good place in life due to his mother's gift of hope. Superman then goes to the moon and places Jolene's urn in a glass vessel shaped like the Superman symbol and asks for forgiveness. Back at the Daily Planet, Superman is shocked to see a familiar face. He notices that a hero from his past is applying for a job at the planet. Clark believes Abdi, the man being interviewed, to be his personal hero, because when Superman had first taken up the responsibilities of a superhero, he was struggling a lot with using his powers effectively and saving the planet. While on a mission to fight off a monster who was destroying the whole city, Superman was blasted by a powerful wave of energy that left him feeling paralyzed. Helpless, Superman lay in the rubble while contemplating his decisions. Then Abdi came along and found Superman. He did his best to make sure that Superman could recuperate himself and fight the monster to save his city. The kid also stated how they were both similar, as they both had lost their previous homes but were not willing to lose their new homes. Abdi asked for the help of two men to take Superman to the top of a collapsing building so that he could soak up the sun's rays and get back to the fight. Midway, the two men abandoned Superman and Abdi due to the fear of being caught under the falling rubble. Abdi still persevered and climbed up all the remaining flights of stairs, holding Superman on his own. Toward the top, Abdi was caught under debris and his hands got crushed. But still, he was determined to wake Superman up, and he did so by screaming and begging for him to fight. Eventually, his hard work paid off, and Superman was able to lift the debris from Abdi's hand and defeat the monster, thus saving the city. When Superman came back looking for Abdi, there was no sign of the boy, and Clark hoped that he'd found his way back to safety. After all these years, Clark was seeing his hero once again, this time rocking a high-tech prosthetic hand. After approaching him, Clark offers to put in a good word for him so he can get the job, but Abdi replies by saying that he already got the position. Abdi was a success story of his own, and he'd become a renowned photographer with great accolades under his name. Clark is stoked to see him, and both of them compliment each other for their work. Superman has to face off against an imp from the fifth dimension named Mr. Mxyzptlk, who's stolen all of the colors from the universe, leaving only black and white behind. After talking to the imp, Superman is able to make him doubt his decisions as the imp thinks about how much the world has changed without colors. He talks about how people used to feel emotions such as happiness and anger, but it's all grey now. Soon after, the imp returns to his dimension after handing the box containing all the colors of the world to Superman. Superman is now free to release the color back again, but he's warned by the imp that perhaps the world is better without laughter, sadness, anger, or happiness. Superman consults Batman and Lois Lane about this decision, and while Batman advises him to keep the box closed, Lois tells him how color makes the small things special. Lois then advises him to release one color at a time so that he doesn't unleash chaos on the world. So, Superman does just that. He first unleashes the color of love and fire, red. With it, he believes people will gain the courage to use fire again. But he also knows that people can use it for rage and fight each other because of it. Then Superman releases the color blue, the color of music and sorrow. He does it so that people can feel sadness once again, hold funerals for their loved ones, and sing their hearts out. He also believes that blue is the color of hope and water, which will allow people to sail across oceans, even in the dark of the night. Eventually, the universe gets all its colors back, and Lois believes that Superman gave the universe the biggest gift it's ever received, all because of Superman's humanity. Then we're taken back to Superman when he was just a simple child going for his first day at kindergarten. Initially, Clark was gelling up well with the other kids, but eventually he came across a girl named Samantha, who was someone the other kids were avoiding. Clark was scared to approach her as he thought he'd lose the other friends he'd made. Eventually, after consulting his parents, Clark befriended Samantha and enjoyed a good time with his friends, who had all accepted Samantha to be their friend too. Clark's parents were shown to be proud of him for doing the right thing, even at such a tender age. Superman, a man of the people. In a flashback, we see Clark's mother Martha at a Smallville diner. Martha talked about how she worried for Clark every moment of her day and wanted what was best for him. Her goal was to comfort her child and give him the strength he needed to face any adversity that came his way. Before leaving, she also said that Clark was not just her son, but he belonged to everyone. Lex Luthor receives a package from his secretary at LexCorp Tower. The package is shown to contain a fragment of red kryptonite. Lex then takes the piece to be thoroughly analyzed in hopes of using it against Superman. One of his secretaries tells him that by modifying the kryptonite to affect Kryptonians in a certain way, they can render Superman powerless at will. Lex then uses the reverse-engineered piece in various ways and tries to get it in contact with Superman. He first tries a robot, but Superman destroys it with heat vision. Then Lex uses an exo-armor to fight Superman along with the fragments, but Superman destroys the weapons before Lex is even able to use them. Eventually, Lex decides to face Superman head-on and imbues his red boxing gloves with the fragments. Successful in draining the powers of Superman, Lex believes that he's won. But towards the end, Superman perseveres through his sheer determination to win and to not let Lex run rampant. In the end, Lex is frustrated at his failures and returns the package to the warehouse. Then we get to learn of an incident where Superman is fighting off a giant robot and he comes across a little girl named Ava. Ava expresses how she wants to help Superman, and the hero asks her to make sure that she and the others are safe while he defeats the robot. After demolishing the robot, Superman gives a piece of the mech to Ava as memorabilia for her act of bravado. The whole time, while Ava is telling the story to her friends, none believe her. Until recess time, when Superman arrives to congratulate Ava on her bravery. While Superman plays with the children, Ava's friends apologize to her for not believing her. Next, we see Superman facing off against Cyborg Superman, a being made of living energy who believes himself to be equal to Superman. Man of Steel is able to save a lonely janitor who somehow survives the onslaught of Cyborg. Superman then starts destroying Cyborg's base and shuns off any hopes that Cyborg had of being his equal by stating that he only fights for himself, while he fights for others. By the end, Cyborg is struck fighting his own creations while Superman flies away, saving the janitor, who expresses his gratitude. Flawed perfection. We see Clark being overburdened with work while also being late for lunch with Bruce and Diana. Clark is struggling to finish a story for the Daily Planet while his boss Perry scolds him for not completing work on time. At the same time, Bruce is worried that Clark will be late to their proceedings once more. Clark calls Bruce and informs him that he'll try to make it in time for their lunch. The two then place bets on whether Clark will reach in time. They put at stake $10,000, which will go to charity either way. Clark then puts on his Superman costume and flies around Metropolis, solving all the problems that he sees. Diana states how Superman can't even fly a mile without finding someone that needs his help, but Bruce states that Superman can do anything that he sets out to do while having time to spare. Meanwhile, Superman is putting out fires, finding hidden bombs, and apprehending criminals and handing them to the police. They then talk about Superman's politeness and how it makes him different from them. Bruce talks about how these erroneous ways make Superman the human he he wants to be, that is, Clark. It doesn't mean that he will let his duties as Superman be any less important. Right then, Superman arrives on time for their lunch, and Batman wins the bet. Superman then faces off against Kilgore in the city of New Mexico, which has collaborated with a group of manhunters. They have to build a fortress in New Mexico using techno-organic parts. Superman teams up with Booster Gold and Cyborg to figure out the strange nature of the manhunters. They conclude that it is Kilgore's programming that's affecting them. Cyborg then tries to infiltrate Kilgore's programming while Superman fights off a replica of Kilgore disguising himself as Brainiac. Hawkgirl also joins the scene and aids Superman in evacuating the civilians from the Citadel. Superman then fights off against a manhunter that has Cyborg Superman embedded into his chest. Meanwhile, Cyborg uses his powers to nullify Kilgore's powers, which allows Superman to manually disconnect Kilgore from the Citadel and get rid of the manhunters. Kilgore then explains to the heroes that the Citadel was an abandoned manhunter base that he reactivated because he feared being alone and being engulfed in loneliness. Superman stays vigilant but polite with Kilgore and states that even though he doesn't condone his actions, he understands them. Superman then parts with him by saying that he needs to ask the world to open itself up to him, after which he'll not feel lonely anymore. We see Dr. Charles Miles being interviewed by Cat Grant. Miles states how he feels depressed and a victim of fate, but whenever he's saved by Superman, he feels like he has a new purpose in life. He feels inspired to do what is right, and it's all because of Superman. Miles further talks about his run-in with Superman when the hero was wounded by a group of robots that had shot him with kryptonite bullets. Miles used his combat medic expertise to help Superman, leading him to defeat the robots. Miles was able to save Superman for the first time in his life and repay the hero. He keeps the surgical knife with him as a lucky charm. Toward the end, a member of the crew reveals himself to be an assassin who has been sent to kill Miles for saving Superman. He shoots him with a red kryptonite laser, but Superman protects him from the oncoming shot, giving Miles time to beat down the assassin. This marks the 13th time Superman saves Miles and the second for Miles saving him. Superman is giving a tour of the Fortress of Solitude to a group of homeless children when an unwanted individual arrives inside the fortress. Toyman had somehow infiltrated the fortress and distracted two of the children. When Superman goes to look for them, he's ambushed by Toyman and his two robots who fight the Man of Steel. One of the robots is a toy teddy bear that one of the children had. Superman fights against the robots to ensure the safety of the children and his home. It takes Superman a whole lot of determination and resolve to fight off the robots, which isn't an easy task. But eventually, Superman is victorious and he sees a little girl upset about losing her teddy. So, Superman hands her his own teddy that his parents gave him back when he was a child, in an act of sacrifice for the girl's happiness. When news hits that an unidentified object will crash into the Earth, Superman flies across the orbit of the Earth in search of the object. He sees it flying past Mars and decides what to do next. He thinks that simply diverting its path would lead it to collide with another world, so he rules that out. Then he decides to use his heat vision to break the object down into smaller pieces. Just then, Superman notices an eye on the object. He realizes that it's a sentient creature that's being affected negatively by the powers of the sun. Superman thinks that the creature isn't acting on its evil tendencies, rather it's just scared and misguided. Superman figures out that the creature thrives in colder environments, so he uses fragments from the asteroid belt, which are low in temperature, to completely cover the creature with it. This allows the creature to calm down and feel safer. The creature then uses its powers to let Superman know that it got separated from its family and has been trying to find them ever since. Superman realizes that the creature can sense electromagnetic signals, so he attaches communication satellites to its body. Superman then parts ways with the creature, hoping that it will be successful in finding its family soon. The everyday problems of being Superman. We're greeted by a scenery of the fifth dimension, where we see Mr. Mxyzptlk being bored out of his life. Previously, he'd lost once again to Superman, meaning he had to stay in the fifth dimension for another 90 days before he could visit the third dimension. The imp doesn't enjoy his life in the fifth dimension as much as the others do. His only way of gaining some solace is with Miss Mxyzptlk, whom he loves a lot. Mxyzptlk decides to propose to her with a gift from the fifth dimension. When he gives her the gift, it breaks, and Mxyzptlk is perplexed as to what had just happened. He looks above him and realizes the root of his problem: Superman. Superman had decided to repay Mxyzptlk by treating him the same way he treats Superman. He ruins his dinner, freezes the walkways, and throws pies at him to annoy him. Meanwhile, Superman sees through every trick of Mxyzptlk, which angers him even more. Superman tries to make the imp understand that he wins because he acts for a purpose. He uses his ideals and morality to understand what should be done. He explains that he did what he did today to make Mxyzptlk understand how it feels to be the butt of such pranks. The imp doesn't take kindly to Superman's lecture, though. Superman then disappointingly says his name backwards and returns to the third dimension. Soon after, Mxyzptlk arrives and kisses the imp on his cheek. She tells him how Superman informed her mother of everything, but this angers Mxyzptlk even further. Next, we see Star Labs needing Superman's assistance. They previously lost all connections with 2 rovers sent to Mars and were hoping that Superman could find them. One of the reporters commented how Superman was too busy for such mundane tasks to worry him, but he's corrected by Lois Lane, who mentions that no task is too little or too big for Superman. Eventually, Superman makes his way to Mars and finds the first rover stuck in some plant-like things. The second rover is then located to be under a boulder of blue kryptonite. There, Superman notices that the rover is stuck alongside Bizarro. Superman hurls the boulder out of sight, freeing the rover and allowing Bizarro much-needed time to recuperate. Clark thinks of a flashback to when Jonathan shared his limited supplies with the neighbors during the time of a bad harvest. Eventually, the whole neighborhood joined hands and helped the less fortunate. Jonathan explained that everyone wanted to do good. They just wanted to see an example of it first to bring out the best side of themselves. Jonathan also told Clark to always be that example. Superman thinks of Jonathan's teachings while holding up a bridge that is about to collapse to allow the emergency team enough time to rebuild the support beams. He realizes that what Jonathan said will always reign true. Next, we see Bizarro stranded alone in the Chihuahuan desert. He feels very lonely and creates the Fortress of Multitude to tackle this problem. Out of nowhere, Bizarro is joined by Superman and the rest of the Justice League, who wish him a happy birthday. Even though Bizarro himself is in the mud when it comes to knowing his background or his birthday, he's happy that the Justice League joins him in celebrating this occasion. While they play games and eat cake, Superman presents Bizarro with a gift and a note. On that note, there is a question that prompts Bizarro to think if he even knows who he is. Bizarro doesn't think much of it and throws it off to the side to open one of his presents. Upon opening, the gift is shown to be a mirror with "cheap copy" written on it. Bizarro is taken aback as the whole Justice League starts laughing at him. It's revealed that this whole ordeal was the machinations of Mr. Mxyzptlk as a form of making fun of Bizarro. Bizarro then crushes the mirror and flies away to sit alone for the rest of the night. Eventually, he's joined by Superman holding a cupcake for him. Bizarro understands that Superman cares for him, and that makes him happy. Then we're taken to the top of the Daily Planet building, where a streamer named Prescott Daily is attempting to gain likes and views. Suddenly, he starts falling until Superman saves him from his death. Instead of showing gratitude, Prescott talks about how this incident will grab a lot of attention on social media. Eventually, this stunt of Prescott starts a challenge called the Save Me Superman Challenge. In the coming days, Superman has to fight against evildoers such as Solomon Grundy, Lex Luthor, Brainiac, Atomic Skull, and Mxyzptlk, while also saving all the people who start falling to their deaths for attention. To fix this problem, Superman goes to the person who started it all. Superman takes Prescott to the skies and asks him if he wants to be someone that was saved by Superman or someone who Superman will have to save others from. Superman ensures that he asks him politely to stop this nonsense challenge before being interrupted by a little girl asking for a selfie. Superman states that even though he has to fight off Luthor while he employs his schemes, he'll take out time for the little girl's picture. Life as Clark Kent and Kal-El. One day during his childhood, Clark was seemingly tensed about something, and Jonathan and Martha were attempting to find out what was bothering him. Suddenly, Clark heard something land from the sky some miles away from their house. Clark immediately went to search for what it was, followed by the Kents. Upon reaching there, Clark saw a spaceship similar to the one he arrived on Earth in. After investigating closer, the ship opened and a dog jumped out to play with Clark. While this happened, a recording of Jor-El played in the background. Jor-El talked about how while building a spaceship strong enough to send his son to Earth, he made a prototype and placed their family's dog inside, named Krypto. Later, Clark and Krypto became best friends while Jonathan explained to Martha how much Clark needed Krypto. He further talked about how both felt like outsiders, but now they had each other by their side. In Metropolis, Clark goes to a grocery store and gives words of encouragement to the shopkeeper, who's worried about her upcoming exams. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a burglar who's attempting to rob Lisa at gunpoint. Clark realizes that the burglar is a teenager who's afraid and acting out of impulse. Clark tries to talk to the teenager and takes him inside so that the others are not scared any further by the situation. Clark kindly talks him down and assures that if he talks to the police honestly, they'll be gentle with him. Eventually, the teenager hands over his gun and surrenders. Lisa is quite shocked that Clark was able to handle the situation so effectively, but Clark mentions how if it was any other criminal, things would have gone for the worse. In the end, Lisa closes the store and goes home to study, as she had already experienced way more than she bargained for that day. She doesn't leave before handing Clark a doll of Superman as a gift, implying that his actions today made him her own personal Superman. We see Lois and Jimmy having a chat at a coffee shop when Lois asks him what his favorite Superman picture is. Jimmy starts talking about this one incident where Superman had to fight off the combined might of Silver Banshee, Bizarro, Luthor, Metallo, Mogul, and Parasite, while also protecting the lives of the innocent bystanders. After a hard-fought battle, Superman was able to overcome all the foes and save the people. After finally avenging the danger, Superman and Jimmy had a conversation where Superman told him that he had a cap over his camera lens the whole time. After taking off the cap, the camera was able to capture a picture of Superman and Jimmy laughing over this incident, which Jimmy describes as his personal favorite picture of Superman. Toward the end of the issue, we take a stroll down memory lane as both parental couples of Superman's life talk about how their son will make them proud. Jor-El and Lara find solace in the fact that their son will be raised healthy and happy on a new planet. Meanwhile, Jonathan's teaching and lessons of value still stick with Superman even after so many years have passed since Jonathan's passing. Superman knows that it's Jonathan's teachings that allow Superman to love humanity as much as he does, and he'll forever be grateful to him. By the end, Superman flies off into space to see Earth as a whole, and he utters the words, "I love you, and I'm so proud of you," much like what Jonathan used to say to him. An inspiration. We're greeted by Superman and Supergirl packing up their stuff at the Fortress of Solitude to move into a new fortress. Streaky is not happy about this, so Supergirl comforts him. Streaky then flies off in a bit of anger as the two follow him closely. During their pursuit, Streaky even hits Superman with his heat vision and damages his left cheek. The cousins then allow Streaky to calm down while they finish their move to the new place. Eventually, Streaky flies to the new fortress and apologizes for his actions. The elves take him in with open arms. Clark and Lois arrive at the Daily Planet for their routine jobs, but Clark is evidently not as ecstatic to work as Lois. Before joining, Clark believed that he'd be able to make a difference with his work at the planet, but that's not been the case, and it troubles him. He thinks that people only want to know about Superman and not Clark Kent, as Superman always hogs the spotlight. Eventually, Clark decides that he'll write his groundbreaking new story, the story of how he became Superman for the people of the future to read. While growing from a young boy to a teenager, Clark was finding it difficult to come to terms with his gift of powers and the fact that he had to hide his identity from the rest of the people. The Kents talked to him about this and stated that they couldn't put themselves in his shoes, but they understood that it was his life and no one else's. They assured him that God made everyone unique, and he also had to choose his own path, no matter if the path had already been taken or not. Eventually, as Clark grew up, he decided to leave Smallville and explore the world. As Superman, Clark experiences limitless adventures and the beauties of the expansive universe, but even then, he takes out time to visit his family in Smallville, not forgetting the roots of where he comes from. Every time they visit the diner, the waitress, who is now much older, serves the Kent family. Whenever Clark comes to Smallville, he greets Annie with as much love as he did earlier. Annie cherishes her small interactions with Clark a lot. In a flashback, Clark was shown to be worried about the cattle while a storm was hitting the farmlands of Smallville. After the storm subsided, Clark was remorseful that they had to let the cows die and vowed that no one else would die on his watch. As Superman, Clark has faced a plethora of challenges and life-altering decisions. He remembers one incident all too clearly, when he heard a man having a heart attack in the distance. Clark rushed to his side and applied CPR to ensure his survival until the medical team arrived. Fortunately, Clark was able to save the man from death, and later he returned back to his date with Lois. We end this issue with the story of a lowly teenager who looks up to Superman but is unable to come to terms with his reality, as even the highest level of imitation of Superman's ideals cannot prepare him for his own upcoming battle. The teenager tries to be like Superman, but he can't be secure with himself. One day, Superman addresses the whole world and speaks out about how he is Clark Kent in his civilian identity and a reporter for the Daily Planet. Watching this announcement, where Superman reveals who he truly is, inspires the teenager. He then musters up the courage to confront his family and tell them that he's gay. After hearing these words, the boy's family hugs and surrounds him. Finally, the boy looks at Superman on the television and thanks him for always inspiring people to be the best versions of themselves. What made Superman Red and Blue so unique? Superman Red and Superman Blue from the Silver Age of comics were the result of an experiment going wrong in all the right ways. Superman was attempting to increase his brain capacity by 100, but in doing so, he also split himself into two different beings who were almost exact replicas of each other. They possessed all the same powers as the normal Superman in addition to a massive increase in intellect and brain power. They had Kryptonian physiology, which allowed them to siphon the power of the sun to become even more powerful. They could use abilities like heat vision, super speed, flight, super hearing, super strength, super stamina, super breath, X-ray vision, telescopic vision, microscopic vision, infrared vision, invulnerability, and life longevity. If we dive deeper into the powers of Superman, It'll take us about an extra hour to explain everything. Just know that Superman is unbelievably powerful and has feats that can put anyone to shame. With Superman Red and Superman Blue of the Silver Age, all of these abilities gained a massive increase as Superman had his brain capacity increased by 100 times. Together, the two Supermen were able to accomplish unbelievable goals in a matter of days. They were able to bring world peace, and if that's not a feat of unfathomable powers, we don't know what is. In the 90s comics titled Superman Red, Superman Blue, Superman gained a plethora of new abilities and also lost some of his previous skills. As we could see in the comic, Superman couldn't use his iconic heat vision anymore, but he could phase through solid materials to avoid being damaged. As Superman was then a being of living energy as opposed to life energy, he could also manipulate various levels of intense energy. Superman gained a new type of enhanced vision, electromagnetic spectrum vision, which allowed him to see the radioactive trail of any appliance or mechanical object. He used it to track down certain things and during pursuits. These Supermen could also transmit frequencies back, which allowed them to hide covertly from radars or satellites. These Supermen also gained the ability of energy projection, and they used it to fire massive beams of energy at their foes. They could also create energy fields which were capable of holding crumbling buildings in place easily. With these energy-based powers, Superman could also store and erupt his energy at will, acting like a walking bomb which could stay under control. Knowing that Superman's powers has no limits, the capability of such an explosion is something we can only imagine. Overall, Superman Red and Superman Blue were superpowered beings that could easily complete every feat Superman has ever accomplished, and more. In conclusion, we believe the stories of Superman Red and Blue went under the radar until the modern-day iteration of the same title came into being. Although the modern comic is far different from its predecessors in every aspect, it's an unbelievably well-written comic with breathtaking artwork. Even then, the 90s comic where we saw the emergence of a Superman with energy-based powers donned in a suit of all blue and all red was iconic and memorable in its own right. The characters were unique even when they were replicas of each other, and achieving that is a difficult task. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.